What if one city cracked the code on housing, crime, corruption, and pollution all at once? Most cities around the world are drowning. They are fighting rising crime rates, crumbling infrastructure, political corruption, and housing crises that leave millions of people without a decent place to live. Leaders argue. Promises are made. Nothing changes. It feels like these problems are just too big, too complicated, too deeply woven into the fabric of society to ever truly fix. But then there is Singapore. This tiny island nation, smaller than the state of Rhode Island, has done something almost no one believed was possible. It built one of the cleanest, safest, most efficient, and most livable cities on the entire planet. From almost nothing in just a few decades. In 1965, Singapore was a struggling, poor, post-colonial nation with no natural resources, no clean water of its own, and massive unemployment. Today, it ranks among the top countries in the world for education, healthcare, safety, and quality of life. This is not a coincidence. This is not luck. This is the story of 10 real, powerful solutions that transformed one city, and the lessons every country on Earth desperately needs to hear. Let us dive in.
Point 1. Public housing that actually works. Let us start with something almost every major city is failing at right now: affordable housing. In cities like New York, London, and Sydney, the housing crisis is out of control. Rents are skyrocketing. Homelessness is growing. Working families can't afford to live near where they work. Governments throw money at the problem and somehow make it worse. Singapore did something radical. In the 1960s, the government created the Housing Development Board, known as the HDB, and set one clear goal: every single citizen deserves a clean, safe, affordable home. Not a promise, a plan. Today, more than 80% of Singapore's population lives in government-built public housing. And here is the wild part: people actually want to live there. These are not rundown projects or forgotten towers. HDB flats are well-maintained, connected to transportation, close to schools and markets, and designed to feel like real communities. The government also created a unique system where citizens can use their mandatory savings from a fund called the Central Provident Fund to purchase their own HDB flat. This turns renters into homeowners. It builds wealth, it builds stability, and it builds pride in the community. The result? Homelessness in Singapore is nearly non-existent. Shantytowns? Gone. Housing waitlists that stretch for decades? Not here. When a government decides housing is a right and not just a market commodity, everything changes.
Point 2. Zero tolerance for corruption. Now here is something that breaks so many countries: corruption. It is like a slow poison. It seeps into every system. It destroys trust. It steals from the poor to feed the powerful. When Singapore gained independence, corruption was everywhere. It was baked into the culture of doing business. Bribes were normal. Nobody trusted the government. Kuan, Singapore's founding prime minister, decided this had to end. Completely. Not reduced. Ended. The government created the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, a powerful independent agency with the authority to investigate anyone. And they meant anyone. Ministers, judges, police officers, top businessmen. No one was safe if they were corrupt. But here is the part that truly changed things. Singapore also decided to pay its civil servants and government officials extremely well. The logic was simple. If honest, talented people earn competitive salaries in public service, they have far less reason to take bribes. The results speak for themselves. Singapore consistently ranks as one of the least corrupt countries in the world, year after year. Transparency International places it in the top 5 almost every single time. When corruption disappears, something beautiful happens. Money goes where it is supposed to go. Roads get built, schools get funded, hospitals get equipped. Trust between citizens and their government grows. And when people trust their government, everything else becomes possible.
Point 3. A criminal justice system that deters. Next, let us talk about crime. Because every major city has a crime problem, and most of them feel stuck. More police, more prisons, same results. Singapore took a different approach. And yes, it is controversial, but the results are impossible to ignore. Singapore's legal system is strict, famously strict. Possession of illegal drugs above certain amounts carries the death penalty. Vandalism can result in caning. Littering comes with fines and mandatory community service. And laws are enforced consistently, regardless of who you are or how much money you have. Now, critics debate the ethics of these laws. That is a real conversation worth having. But here is what the data shows. Singapore is one of the safest cities on the planet. A woman can walk alone at 2 a.m. in most parts of the city and feel safe. Children ride the subway alone. Tourists carry expensive cameras without fear. The murder rate in Singapore is extraordinarily low, hovering around 0.2 per 100,000 people, compared to over 5 in the United States. Beyond strict laws, Singapore also invested heavily in social programs to prevent crime before it starts. Education, employment support, youth outreach, mental health services. Punishment alone does not build a safe city, but punishment combined with opportunity, that is a different story. Safety is not just a luxury. It is the foundation that everything else is built on. Point 4. An education system built for the future. Speaking of opportunity, let us talk about education. Singapore's education system is regularly ranked among the very best in the world. Students here consistently outperform their peers in math, science, and reading across international assessments, like the Program for International Student Assessment, known as PISA. Not by a little, by a lot. But what makes Singapore's system genuinely different is the philosophy behind it. Education here is not just about memorizing facts. It is about developing critical thinking, problem solving, and resilience. Teachers are among the most respected and well-paid professionals in the country. Becoming a teacher in Singapore is competitive. Only the top graduates are selected. The government also recognized early on that not every child learns the same way or excels at the same things. So while the system is rigorous, it has pathways, academic tracks, technical tracks, vocational programs that help young people find where they truly shine. There is also a deep cultural emphasis on learning that starts at home. But the government reinforced this with free or heavily subsidized schooling, strong support systems for struggling students, and continuous updates to the curriculum to stay ahead of what the job market actually needs. The result is a workforce that punches far above its weight. A tiny nation with no oil, no gold, no vast farmland, but a population so well educated and skilled that global companies fight to set up headquarters here. Education is not a cost. It is the greatest investment a country can ever make.
Point 5. Water from thin air. Here's one that sounds almost unbelievable. Singapore has no natural freshwater sources. None. The island has no rivers or lakes large enough to sustain a population of nearly 6 million people. For decades, it was entirely dependent on importing water from Malaysia. That dependency was a national security crisis waiting to happen. So Singapore did what Singapore does. It engineered its way out of the problem. Today, Singapore has what it calls the 4 national taps: water from local catchment areas, imported water, reclaimed water called new water, and desalinated water. New water is perhaps the most impressive. It is ultra-purified, recycled wastewater. Water that was once used, flushed down drains, collected from industry, is put through an advanced multi-barrier purification process that exceeds World Health Organization drinking standards. It is cleaner than most tap water in developed countries. Singapore now recycles nearly 40% of its water. Its desalination plants can produce enough water to meet 30% of the nation's needs, and ambitious expansion plans aim to make the country completely self-sufficient in water by 2061. This is not just an environmental story. This is a survival story, and it is a blueprint for a world where fresh water is becoming one of the most precious and scarce resources on Earth. Countries that ignore their water future will not have one.
Point 6. Urban planning that prioritizes people. Most cities grew organically, messily, without much of a master plan. Roads were built for horses, then cars were jammed onto them. Neighborhoods sprawled in every direction. Green spaces disappeared under concrete. The result is the choking, gridlocked, ugly urban sprawl we see in cities all over the world. Singapore planned differently. From the very beginning, the government treated urban planning as one of its most important functions. The Urban Redevelopment Authority designed Singapore with the long term in mind, decades ahead, not just the next election cycle. Every neighborhood has parks, schools, healthcare clinics, and public transport within easy reach. Housing is integrated with nature. There are more than 350 parks and 4 nature reserves in a country smaller than New York City. Singapore is often called the city in a garden because greenery is not an afterthought. It is woven into the architecture itself. Buildings have rooftop gardens. Highways have plant-covered walls. New developments are required to replace whatever greenery they displace. The city is also extraordinarily walkable and pedestrian-friendly, with covered walkways protecting people from tropical rain and heat. Public spaces feel human. Streets feel safe. When a city is designed around the needs of people, rather than the needs of cars and corporations, something profound shifts. People want to be outside. Communities form. Mental health improves. Life feels better. It sounds simple, but so few cities actually do it.
Point 7. A world-class public transport system. And while we are talking about getting around, Singapore's public transport system is one of the best in the world, full stop. The Mass Rapid Transit, known as the MRT, is the backbone of the system. It is clean, air-conditioned, punctual, and affordable. Trains run every 2 to 3 minutes during peak hours. Breakdowns are rare. When they do happen, it makes national news because it is so unusual. The bus network fills in the gaps, and everything is connected through a single payment card called the Easy Link card, or now integrated into mobile phones. So getting from any point A to any point B is seamless, fast, and frustration-free. Here is the other half of this story. Singapore made it very difficult and expensive to own a private car. To buy a car, you first need to buy a certificate of entitlement, which costs tens of thousands of dollars and is only available in limited numbers through a bidding system. Add the actual car price, import duties, and road taxes, and owning a vehicle becomes a luxury only the wealthy pursue. This was a deliberate policy choice. By making car ownership expensive and public transport excellent, Singapore steered millions of people toward buses and trains. The roads are relatively uncongested. Air quality is better. Carbon emissions are lower. Most countries do the opposite. They make driving cheap and easy, then wonder why their public transport fails. Singapore showed the world a better way. Point 8.
Healthcare that delivers without bankrupting people. Now let us talk about something that keeps millions of families up at night: healthcare costs. In the United States, a single hospital stay can wipe out a family's entire savings. In many developing countries, quality healthcare simply does not exist for the poor. The gap between what healthcare could be and what it actually is for most people in the world is heartbreaking. Singapore built a system that threads the needle between two failures: the bloated, overpriced private system and the underfunded, overburdened public system. The foundation is a mandatory savings scheme called MediSave. Every working Singaporean contributes a portion of their income into a personal medical savings account. These funds can be used to pay for hospitalization, surgery, and certain outpatient treatments for themselves and their family members. For bigger expenses, there is MediShield Life, a compulsory national health insurance scheme that protects against catastrophic medical bills. And for those who truly cannot afford care, there is MediFund, a safety net of last resort funded by the government. Public hospitals in Singapore offer tiered ward options. You can choose a lower-cost shared ward or pay more for a private room. This preserves choice while keeping basic care affordable. The result is a country with life expectancy among the highest in the world, infant mortality among the lowest, and healthcare costs that are a fraction of what Americans pay. Great healthcare does not have to mean going broke. Singapore proved it.
Point 9. Managing diversity with intentional policy. Here is a challenge that almost every country faces, but very few talk about honestly. How do you build a unified, peaceful society out of people from completely different ethnicities, religions, and cultures? Singapore is made up of Chinese, Malay, Indian, and other communities, each with their own languages, foods, traditions, and faiths. In many parts of the world, that kind of diversity has been a source of tension, conflict, and violence. Singapore chose to manage diversity as a policy priority, not leave it to chance. One of the most fascinating examples is the ethnic integration policy in public housing. When HDB flats are sold, there are strict quotas ensuring that no neighborhood becomes ethnically homogeneous. Every block, every estate has a deliberate mix. Neighbors are forced, in the best way, to know and live alongside people different from themselves. Schools teach children about different cultures and religions from a young age. There are 4 official languages. Racial harmony is not just a slogan, it is built into the architecture of daily life. Sensitive topics like racial and religious insults are treated seriously under the law. This is controversial in some circles, but the outcome is a society where interfaith and interracial harmony is genuinely high, where Diwali, Chinese New Year, Eid, and Christmas are all celebrated openly and joyfully as national events. Diversity can be a strength or a fracture. Policy determines which one it becomes.
Point 10. Long-term thinking as a national religion. Our final point is perhaps the most important and the hardest for most countries to copy, because it is not a program or a policy. It is a mindset. Singapore thinks long-term, not in 4-year election cycles, not in quarterly reports, in decades. The founding generation of Singapore's leaders made decisions they knew they would never live to see the full benefit of. They planted trees under whose shade they would never sit. And somehow, they built institutions and a culture of governance that carried that mindset forward. Singapore's sovereign wealth funds, Temasek Holdings and GIC, manage hundreds of billions of dollars of national reserves. These are not rainy day funds. They are generational wealth, built to ensure Singapore can survive anything: economic crises, geopolitical shifts, global pandemics. Infrastructure is planned for 50 years from now. The school curriculum is designed around what jobs will look like in 20 years. Water supply plans stretch to 2061.
Climate adaptation plans account for rising sea levels over the next century. Contrast this with most governments, where leaders prioritize what makes them look good before the next election. Cut this tax, build this road, announce that project. The future can wait. In Singapore, the future never waits. Every decision today is evaluated against its impact on the next generation. That is not just good governance. That is love. Love for a country, for children not yet born, for a future not yet written. And that, more than any single policy, is why Singapore became the city that solved the problems every country is still struggling with.
Now look, is Singapore perfect? Absolutely not. Critics point to restrictions on press freedom, limits on political opposition, and a government that holds significant control over many aspects of life. These are real and legitimate debates. But what Singapore proves, undeniably, powerfully, is that the problems the rest of the world treats as inevitable are not. They are solvable. Housing crises are solvable. Corruption is solvable. Water scarcity, traffic chaos, racial tension, healthcare costs, all solvable. With the right vision, the right long-term commitment, and leaders willing to prioritize people over politics. The world does not need to copy Singapore exactly. No country should. Context matters, culture matters, history matters. But every government, every city, every community can look at what Singapore built and ask the most important question in governance. Why not us? Why can we not decide that every family deserves a safe, affordable home? Why can we not build a train system people actually want to use? Why can we not pay our teachers and doctors what they are worth? Why can we not stop tolerating corruption and start demanding better? The answers exist. The models exist. The question is whether we have the will. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 10 solutions shocked you the most? What do you think your city or country could learn from Singapore? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video made you think differently, give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people find this content and start asking these important questions. And if you want